I will kick things off with the topic of our webinar today. It is Zero Trust, Stealth, Defend, and Recover. Thanks for joining us. I'm Lee Bruce. I'm the marketing manager, also the hostess for this event, and the stage crew. You could call me that as well. We are in 60 countries across 6 continents. We've done 1,000+ implementations. We have over 500,000 users covered, and we have ranked very proudly as the #1 fastest growing MSSP in America for 2 years in a row, as well as the #1 ranked in the Southeast region. And this would be on Inc. 5000's very prestigious list. So we're very proud of that. Next, we will go into our speaker today and introduce you to Perry. Perry Schumacher is our CSO here at Ridge IT, and you are in wonderful hands today because at Ridge, we have been doing Zero Trust implementations before it was even called Zero Trust. So you're about to hear from an expert on the matter. So today we will go over, just for a little bit of housekeeping, the agenda. This is a 60-minute webinar. We have a 15-minute Q&A session at the end. If you have any questions throughout, feel free to drop that in the chat, the Q&A, and we will get to those at the end. It's possible Perry may answer some as we go throughout the event as well. We will be covering the cybersecurity and zero trust topics of identities, devices, perimeter, and network. So now we will pass it over to Perry and get started.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming. I see a lot of familiar faces here. So hello, nice to see you guys. As you know, my goal here is not to sell you something, but to share information. And so what I want to start with, we're going to go over Zero Trust. I want to start with the highest level, like, why does cybersecurity exist? What's our primary objective? What I find, and I do this myself too, sometimes we get so wrapped up in, the widgets. What does it do? How does it not do it? How does it work? And we get so into the weeds that we forget sometimes how to articulate what our goal is as a cybersecurity professional. And so to kind of help us maintain focus, and I'm going to start from here and just go in a little bit layers deeper, is our primary focus as a cybersecurity professional is to protect all of the company data at all times. We don't want exfil. We don't want encryption. We want to make sure it's protected. The second thing that we're really trying to achieve is business continuity. And that's something that's good to keep in mind as we move forward and we talk to the executives inside of our companies. Because again, we have to, a lot of us are technical in nature, and it's hard to express to them the value in our objectives. And so sometimes if we frame it in between really our 2 key objectives of cybersecurity, kind of help us get a little bit better funding and help them understand, why it is that particular widget matters to the company. The second thing I want to talk about is Zero Trust. So that's what this webinar is about. And I'm going to simplify it and kind of walk you through how we can achieve it. At first, I want to touch on what it actually is and how these concepts are in no way new to IT or cybersecurity. So according to Forrester, threat prevention is achieved by only granting access to applications and workloads with policy-informed, continuous, contextual, risk-based verification across all users and devices. It's extremely eloquent. I couldn't have wrote it better myself. But if we look back at those of us who have been doing technology for a long time, in 2000, I was sitting in a server farm in power plants hoping that our grid didn't go down. Everybody was waiting for the ball to drop. I was hoping that, our lights didn't turn off. So working for those organizations, we had all these things. Right? We didn't create a user unless we knew who you were. You worked for the company. It mattered what country you were in. It mattered what department you were in. That is how we granted you access through our checklists. And then when you got promoted, we reviewed that. And then we had quarterly or biannual reviews of every account inside of the organization. And we looked at those accounts and made sure that the privileges were correct. And so at that time, one of the companies I worked for was Enron. May not have a good taste in everybody's mouth because there's been movies about what happened at Enron, but yes, I did work for them. And they were a very large organization. So we did a lot of this stuff already. The difference is we did it manually. We had to review the entire database list to be able to see where you are, compare it to HR, your current title. But a lot of these things that we're talking about, the core principle of Zero Trust has been used by the tech industry for a very long time. And a lot of this was, maybe it was done a little bit more, let's say, voraciously at larger organizations because it mattered to them more at the time. But what's the difference between then and now? It's the tooling. Back then, it was people that ran off Excel spreadsheets and database and lists and did it in quarterly or biannual or annual fashion. Now we have tooling that can achieve that type of objective, but we can do it on a daily basis, on a 20-minute basis. So the objective hasn't changed. What's really changed is the way that we're able to achieve that objective, the different tooling that's available for us to be able to succeed. And then we've wrapped that tooling and concept up in two words called zero trust. But we've been trying to achieve that overall principle for a very, very, very long time. And those of you on this call that have equally gray hair are familiar with that. So I just want to make sure that we just all understand this is not a novel concept, it's novel tooling. So boiling zero trust down into three basic concepts to not overcomplicate it. You've got your 7 pillars of zero trust. There's a bunch of checklists out there. Zero trust obviously is not extremely well defined because it's a fairly new term, and then tooling is changing all the time. But we're really trying to do three things. One of them is prevent unauthorized access. All of us are familiar with that. The second one is limit the blast radius. We really have two mechanisms for that, right? So one is your visibility and access, and the other one is speed of detection and containment. So when every time you say limit blast radius, that's what you're looking at, right? How do I limit what you can see so you can't lateral spread? Limit your accounts. And the second thing I can do to limit the blast radius is how quickly can I identify bad behavior and act on it? Right. So that's what we mean about limiting the blast radius. And third is you're really trying to push to make things recoverable, moving to the point of disposable. Now, depending on the industry you're in, there's different levels of how achievable this is, right? So you can't go like zero trust means everything is disposable. Well, that's not possible if you're in a manufacturing plant. You've got PLCs. You can't dispose of them. You can't SaaS them. So there are industries in which some of these tenets or some of these objectives are not fully achievable, but you push it all the way to the max. Like how far can I get? And then there are certain technological things where the tool doesn't exist for me to be able to do it. And again, going back to we used to do this, we didn't have the tools. Now we have better tools. In zero trust, a lot of times you hear, identity is your key component. And they're not wrong. That is true. But really, why are we saying that? Right? It really is the result of visibility and access. And those two things, from attacker's perspective, are essentially the same. And that's what we have to wrap our head around. A lot of times we focus so hard on our IDP that we're like, well, they don't have access. Well, it's like, well, they don't have access with the username and password, but they do have access, right? Because if I'm able to get into your company in any way, shape, or form through an IPsec tunnel, through a VPN, through something I throw on your network, I have visibility, which then means I can talk to your computers, which then means I have access to them. So we need to look at visibility and access as being cojointed. Like that's the same thing. If I can see it, I can access it. If I can talk to it, I can access it. And we want to be able to remove access. And when we say that word, we need to consider that visibility as part of that. And for fun, I put a little nmap command down there that if I had a script for vulnerabilities, I could run by having visibility to your server and see what you had that was vulnerable so I can start planning my attack. So I very well, from an attacking perspective, have absolute access to what I need to start an attack on you. So those two words are married. And that's one thing that we have to shift in our mind because a lot of us have been around for a while. Access to us is username, password, validation. Access needs to become, can I even see it? And that's one of the mind shifts that we have to make while we're moving into kind of a zero trust posture. So as we talked about before, and what is really true is that identity is the cornerstone of zero trust. If I do not control my identity, every other layer that I'm going to put on top of it to really achieve zero trust loses its efficacy rate. So it's not like you can't do them, and it's not like they don't help. The understanding is that approaching it in this manner increases the efficacy of the other things that you're doing. Because at the end, and what you're going to see throughout this presentation, is that these, although we are going to talk about them as if they were separate, we cannot manage them and view them as separate. And that's part of the challenge of moving to zero trust, is that we're trying to piecemeal. We bought this, we bought that, we bought this, and we viewed everything into its own little silo. But in order to really get to zero trust, we can't have a siloed view. We have to have a journey view. We have to have the end state in mind and know what the tools are and walk our way to the end state. And the first one would happen to be identity. We're going to touch on devices, perimeter, network access, again, that visibility thing we talked about. Application and network access, as we're moving to the cloud, that's starting to merge. Our local networks, with the exception of some industries, again, you're a manufacturing facility, that ain't going to merge. Your power plant, that's not going to merge. Right? There's certain industries in which that's not going to merge. But there's a lot of industries where the blur between network and application access is really just the same thing, and we're moving to SaaS. Like the network is starting to dissolve. COVID hit, we did remote work. When we came back, we were already SaaS based because not only did the VPNs change, but it promoted us to move more things to SaaS. And then the local network started losing its actual meaning, right? And that's going to happen more and more over time, that as we move along, that local networking component becomes less and less relevant. While we're talking about identity, what do we need to focus on? What's important about the identity pillar or the identity layer? First off, everything needs to be SSO'd. We need SAML across the world. You need a centralized store of your users with centralized access so you can actually control it. Can I understand banking industry? I get it. You have software developed in the 80s that they slapped a new coat of paint on the front, and there is no way you're going to SSO into it. Like, there are exceptions to the rule. But wherever it is possible, this is a high priority project internally, because you don't want to be managing multiple usernames and passwords, because every username and password you have, you've got to think about it as an expansion of your attack surface. And we're in the business of attack surface reduction because we want business continuity. The bigger my attack surface, the more probable I am to impact our business continuity. So I want to bring that in together, and I want to have a centralized store. Also, how in the world do I do behavior analytics if you are using your username and password in 6 different places and I can't see it? In order for me to understand behavior, to see deviations, I need to see all of the behavior. So we're trying to centralize this to be able to start building upon that identity pillar. The other piece is we have to have MFA. Now, granted, 3 years ago, the insurance industry did us all cybersecurity people a favor. And they said, if you don't have MFA, we're not going to renew your cyber insurance. So that fight that we fought for a very long time kind of got won by everybody who needs to carry a cyber insurance policy. It's like, you're getting MFA or we're not renewing your policy. So that's great. Some people do not carry cyber insurance. And there are a couple of carriers that I've seen that still do not require it. So in that regard, some of you may still be fighting this battle, but MFA is a requirement. Like that's not a negotiable. You have to have MFA. If you don't have MFA, you are easy pickings to drive by ransomware. That's got to be done. The other piece, so now that we've centralized it, we have MFA, right? Or some type of secondary validation, be it a YubiKey or certificate pinning, certificates, some kind of validation beyond the username and password to be able to get a valid token. We now go into behavior analytics and risk scoring. So you need to make sure that whatever solution that you're doing, that you're using, has the ability to do that, and you have configured it. Some of this is the simple stuff, right? So you can't log in from Los Angeles and MFA out of New York. It makes no sense. You can't travel in an airplane that long. And we've had breaches that happened like that. Somebody logged in New York and MFA'd out of Russia, and they got in. That should never be a possibility, right? That's not a correct user behavior. Your travel patterns should be known. You should be able to see what is the user's normal activity and be able to detect what's outside of that and apply a risk score to that user, which then you can subsequently use in automation. Part of the problem of this is false flags. So in order to avoid false flags, you have the integrations with your EDR. You have your contextualization on the laptop that they're using. So when we look at an identity, a lot of times we're thinking human being and an MFA, or human being and a YubiKey stick, right? That's what we're thinking. And because of that, we really only have one point of contention, which is the human. So we need to expand that. Like the human in most organizations has a computer. That computer belongs to that specific human. It's not a common computer. Now, there are industries that have common computers. So this particular piece doesn't apply to those particular users. To the other users, it does. So when I look at an identity, the identity no longer is just the person and the MFA. The identity is the person, the computer they're using, the location they're at, their recent behavior, how they logged in. So I need to consider all of these factors before I authenticate them. And if I have those factors continuously, when I do flag because there is an alert or an intrusion, my flagging is more accurate because I have more points to validate on. That means I'll disrupt the business less. We all remember back in the day when credit cards decided to start using contextual based flagging, right? And we took a trip from Texas to Florida and went to the grocery store, and they denied our purchase because they're like, you don't live in Florida. Like, it was terrible. We're beyond that now in the IDP space. The more points that we're evaluating, the less that's likely that we're going to lock a user out when it's not truly a threat, and that comes into the automated response of threats. So we talked about blast radius, and I said we've got two levers, right? Visibility and access, and then intrusion detection and how quickly we can respond. So as we add these additional layers to the context of the user, my detection and response capability are shooting up through the roof. Not only am I just flat out denying the capability of the attacker, but I'm also able to detect a variance faster, which then allows me to use workflow automations depending on the tool that you're using. If you're using Entra, if you're using Okta, if you're using Ping, depending who your IDP is, you want to get into an IDP that will have those capabilities where you can create workflows that, based on context, will automatically take action and lock users out. You'll get a ticket. And as we talked about before, multiple points, higher accuracy, less chance I'm locking the CEO out for something silly. The other piece that we see a lot that I just want to encourage you guys to do, please get rid of your local AD. And this is a challenge that we've been having. We moved into this hybrid scenario with Microsoft. And after we went to hybrid, well, everything's working. And I'm hybrid and I have SSO, I'm good. Nothing's breaking. There is no pain. There's zero pain. It's just working. So it becomes a very low priority to kill that server. But what we forget about sometimes, and we don't articulate well enough to management, is that the single greatest threat that you have in your environment is that AD server. The difference of your vulnerability, if I have access to your environment and you have an AD server on-prem versus not having an AD on server on-prem, is a difference between you maybe surviving and you being on your knees. That is the difference. That AD server on-prem is a tremendous vulnerability. They can Kerberos it. It is very susceptible for attack. And you probably named it in a way that makes it very clear to me when I start scanning your network, what server is your AD server. So you're going to put a target on it to let me know where it's at. And so I'm going to go and attack that. And then what intrusion detection do you have on that AD server to really protect it and detect when something like that happens? Right? So it should be a priority. Whatever's keeping that thing on-prem, there should be a project that's brought up to the board or to your management that says, this thing has got to die. What is in the way? How do we evaluate alternative software so this thing can go away? Because here is the risk. This is the most vulnerable thing that we have. It's the thing that makes us most likely to be ransomware if we were to get an incident. We need to remove it. It's our number one threat. And then have a project where you're evaluating how to actually get that done. And don't stay in that limbo forever, because it's very tempting to take no action because squeaky wheel gets the grease, and that wheel don't squeak once you got into a hybrid mode. And how am I doing on time? All right, I got to accelerate a little bit. Now we're looking at the device level. So when we're looking at our devices, first thing is that we need to start going and migrating into just-in-time privilege escalation. Everybody that needs to install something that's in our IT organization does not need to have admin privileges, nor should they have an account. So unsecure places, your admins are using their admin accounts as daily drivers. Shouldn't do that, but let's be real, a lot of people are doing that. Fairly secure places, they've got two. They've got their daily driver, and they've got their admin account that they log into when they want to do something. Okay, what's the next step? The next step is removing that capability almost completely and doing just-in-time privilege escalation for them when they need it. So it gives them contextualized access for a period of time for a specific installation. This is a capability that will, again, reduce our attack surface. The less admin accounts that I have hanging about, the lower my attack surface is. So we want to try to move more and more towards a just-in-time privilege escalation. And it actually makes life easier for people, for example, development shops that have that struggle. Like, if you're a game developer or something like that, and we have a couple of clients that are like that. The developer wants local admin access because they want to, they've got stuff to do. They frankly, they're like, you're going to slow me down. And, these games are what makes us money. And I'm very sorry that you feel that I need to be secure, but I need to make the company money and you're in my way. Then we need to go to continuous device validation. And we touched on this a little bit, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. But remember, when I'm looking at an identity, I need to look at that identity as a group of things, right? Device health is one of them. Does this device belong to my company? Is another one. Do you have standard hardening on the device and is it compliant? Is this actually Perry's device? Because Perry should not be accessing my network from Han's device or from Lindsay's device or from Lee's device. He should be using his computer. We gave him one. Use the one I gave you. Right? So we need to be looking at that identity as a group of components that we gave to that particular employee. And that entire group of components is what validates them, not just their username, password, MFA, username, password, YubiKey. Right? So we need to look at it in a different way when we're trying to validate an identity. The other part is, again, we talked about centralized management, make sure all things are turned on, syncing of local files and backup, the Intune and autopilot. Those two things, if you have an M license from Microsoft, you have this. This is just elbow grease. This moves to that recovery and disposability of assets. There should not be many reasons that an end user's computer severely disrupts business. All of the files that they refuse to put in SharePoint that we've begged them to do for 20 years and they're still not doing are saved to the My Documents folder. That's synced to OneDrive. OneDrive is backed up via, say, AvePoint. All of your information, as critical as it may be to the company, is always backed up. And we're not even asking the user to change their behavior. That's the key thing. It's more the Japanese part. Let me put grass, see where the pathways are, and then I'll put some sidewalks where people walk. Right? We know they're saving things on their local hard drive, whether we like it or not. So what we're going to do is we're just going to back up their My Documents folder. Obviously, we're going to back up their desktop because a lot of employees, that's the only place they save things. So if their laptop gets lost or gets stolen or gets ransomware, this isn't a problem for us. If we have Intune and autopilot and we have known folder moves, it's simply, here's the new laptop, plug it in, log in, it's going to download all your stuff again, get to working. So this goes to that business disruption process. Even if they go in and they do and attack one of our users and it is impactful to our user base, so what? Give them another laptop, have them have coffee. It's going to take them an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and all their stuff will be back. And then just get back to work. So we've really reduced how much damage somebody can do to us and business disruption when that happened. And the other piece that we need to look on a device level, the attackers are going to install remote access software that you have whitelisted. Right? They're not trying to install novel things that may have a known hash that will trigger a problem. They want something with a signed certificate that's benign, like TeamViewer or AnyDesk. If you don't use TeamViewer or you don't use AnyDesk, there's no reason for you not to have that app blacklisted. That is a common way of them accessing once they dupe your user. So every remote software that is not the one that you're using, you should have either in Intune or on your EDR or in some place. It should be disallowed to being installed. Every single one on the market except the ones you use, because that's what they're using. They want that certificate, that signed certificate that's benign. Now moving on to the perimeter. So really, I've got two types of people that I talk to, those who do SSL inspection and those who do not. The people who do not, they tend to really get shocked when we simulate an attack and everything that I do gets through. And they realize what we all should know. If you're not doing deep packet inspection or SSL decryption, and I'm sending you encrypted attacks, you've zero trusted the attacker, right? Like you see nothing. Everything I send you is going to get through because it's encrypted. And then you take a look at the internet and good luck finding a non-encrypted website. So most of your attacks are going to come in some kind of form of encryption. So if your edge isn't doing decryption at all, and there's still so many people who are not doing that, you need to move to a solution that does and test it before you buy it. Because we do this test on Sonic walls, FortiGates, and not all SSL, inspection, deep packet inspection is the same. So run some tests, buy the right ones. You got questions, let us know. We can share some of our testing data with you. The second thing is your edge device that's monitoring your internet traffic and what that user is doing needs to be able to have great visibility and CTI feeds on command and control servers. But on top of that, they need to know the type of commands being sent. So I can tell if you're going to command and control server without SSL encryption, right? Because I can read the header. I know what IP address you're going to. That IP address is bad juju. I stop it. But if I'm not decrypting, I don't know what type of information it's sending. Now, command and control server are transient by their very nature. Some are more transient than others, but they get detected and then they need to move it to a different IP address so they can continue functioning. Knowing that, the type of traffic that it flows back and forth, it's really easy to earmark what they are. It's not that hard to detect command and control style traffic. So if they move or you get attacked somebody's going back to command and control server, but that command and control server isn't from a known command and control server IP address as per our threat feeds, we can at least see the type of traffic and go, that's actually command and control style traffic, and disrupt it. So you want a firewall that is capable of detecting that from your end user device. And that just marries right into IPS and threat detection. When we talked about the remote access tools, we have to remember there's the installable version, but there's also the web link, right? I can send you a TeamViewer invite right now. You can click OK. I can ask you for control. You can say yes. And so how does that look like? Well, Black Basta, I'll sign you up to 3,000, exaggerating, let's say 40 websites, honey.com, use other mydiscountwhatever.com, and I'll sign you up to like 30, 40 of those. You'll get spammed with email. And then I'll call you and go, hey, I'm from tech support. I'm here to help you. I know that you have an email problem. And you're like, oh, yeah, I've been getting all this spam email. I didn't sign up to any of those websites. Yeah. I'm new at the company. They told me to come fix your email box. I'm going to send you a TeamViewer link real quick, and we'll get this sorted for you. Okay, great. And send them a TeamViewer quick to your remote worker or the guy sitting at the office. They click OK. I say, yeah, I just need control to be able to start doing some stuff to be able to clean up your email box. I mean, it's super easy to dupe an end user. This is a conversation that's had. The Black Bass is very successful because this is very easy to do. And you get somebody who will talk matter of fact like I do on the phone, doesn't have a particular accent, and that user is going to acquiesce, and suddenly they're inside of your environment, right? So if I just were to block TeamViewer, since we don't use it anyway, I've just killed that attack. Well, let me try AnyDesk. AnyDesk doesn't work either. Well, crap, right? So we want to, on the browser level, to block that access from the remote software, control software too, from known good remote control softwares, because we don't use them, but the attacker will. User-based risk access profiles. So just give you a use case. You have a disgruntled employee. They're doing certain things online. Maybe due to their behavior, you want to restrict their access to Dropbox or to places where they could upload data. We need to have our edge protection looking at the risk profile of these users, and based on that, be able to apply certain policies. Somebody's looking like he's job hopping. Yeah, you probably want to restrict access to data. The other part is risk-based browser isolation. So I don't have to completely restrict them, but I can isolate their browser. So when you're looking at your edge protection, obviously this needs to be wherever you are. You have Zscaler, you have Netscope, Palo Alto Prisma. You know, we sell Zscaler, we sell Netscope, we don't sell Prisma. But you have several solutions out there, and I just named the top three, right? Those are the ones that actually work. Then you've got other, lagging second, third place people like, Cloudflare and things like that. But if you're going for something that really works, top three, those are your top three. So you have options to be able to do these things with tooling that is top notch to be able to start implementing zero trust as it comes to your perimeter. The other piece is network segmentation and application access. And I said, as time goes on, that network is disappearing. Local networks are becoming less and less relevant because we're moving into SaaS. So that other part of the risk scoring starts to matter, right? When I got all my things off-prem and I'm not hosting anything in AWS or Azure, and all my stuff is SaaS, then that perimeter part becomes really, really important. But if I'm still have some stuff on-prem and I still have some stuff in AWS or in Azure or in a data center, a colo, then my network is still relevant. But relevant to the point to where I want to grab all my users and put them on one side where they can all get ransomware, because who cares? Intune, Autopilot, their computers are disposable. It causes a hiccup in the company, not really a disruption. But their visibility or their access to the actual applications that will hurt me is extremely limited. They can view the application. They can't view the server. So when I say that I grant you access to an application, I mean access in the term that we said above. You have access, including visibility, only to that thing. So the other 65,000 ports, you don't know they're there. You try to talk to them, they don't talk to you. They don't know you. You're on some public IP address. You're not on a local IP address. You can't port scan. You can't Nmap. You try to Nmap, and you're going to get all kinds of weird responses. So it's important for us to keep on moving into that ZTNA posture. And what does that mean? It means that your VPNs and IPsec tunnels, which one and the same pretty much, they need to die. We have to start phasing that type of technology out, because that allows me to go back and forth with any communication I want. I can see whatever I want that's on that subnet. We all know we can do segmentation. Yes, we can. And at certain levels of enterprise, depending on the type of company, that is the right answer. You do segmentation plus ZTNA. But for a lot of us in the mid-market, ZTNA by itself without segmentation will work. It's more manageable. It will provide us the equal level of security. It will cost me less money, and I'll be able to get to that zero trust posture. And then we can do those checks, right? I can check to see if your computer is the right computer. I can do that through my ZTNA solution on top of my IDP. So I'll move past here and go into, I'm going to skip the where your data is part. I'm going to talk about the zero trust architecture because we're running close on the time limit. This is an example. See that big Z in the middle? Replace it with Netscope. Replace it with Palo Alto Prisma. See that CrowdStrike on the bottom right? Replace that with Windows Defender. Believe it or not, they actually score really, really well in our attacks now. So some of these solutions are replaceable. But the point I want to make is that you've got to plan ahead. You can't, SIMs and SOARs have deficiencies. Anyone on here that has implemented a SIM or a SOAR understands the problem. Every vendor will send their data to your SIM in whatever format that vendor chose. There's no unified format. So each SIM provider has to figure out how to, one, digest it, and two, relate it to a CTI so it's productive for you. So that's the deficiency, because the only people that are close to doing that somewhat good is Splunk. And if you want to get Splunk, you need to, I don't know, pawn the company to get money to buy Splunk. So it's just an attainium for most companies to get one that's actually decent. And then you're having conversations about data you're not going to bring in because it's so expensive. So its utility is dicey. So for those of us who live in a world where budgets matter, what do we do? Well, when we're buying the solutions, when we're attending to each one of these pillars, we need to go through a planning phase and understand which solutions will come when and how they interact with the other one. Because most of these solutions, especially the top tier ones, have integrated APIs and workflows that will cross back and forth. These CrowdStrike and Zscaler talk. Zscaler can tell CrowdStrike to do things. CrowdStrike's workflow can tell Zscaler to do things. So now my SIM and my SOAR is already covered because those two solutions have a tech alliance. They're both top of the line. They both communicate. So now I can do this. Okta will do this. Entra will do that. We'll integrate with these solutions. So we can't approach it with piecemeal, because if we do, we'll end up buying a solution that meets whatever pillars need. But then when we want to get that identity and view it as an entity versus just a person, we can't do that because this thing doesn't talk to that thing. And now I have tech debt. I spent the money. I signed a 3-year agreement with this other software. My boss isn't going to let me buy another one. So I'm stuck with this for 3 years, which means in 3 years from now, maybe I'll achieve that tenant because I can't talk to it. Or I'm going to have to buy Splunk or some SOAR tool to try to make these two things talk together, because I've approached Zero Trust in a piecemeal approach. Instead of looking at Zero Trust going, this is what my baseline need is going to be. I'm going to have this phased in approach over the next year, next 2 years, next 3 years. These are the things that talk to each other. This is why I'm going to buy these in each position, because nobody does everything good all the way around. There's no such thing as let me buy this one solution and now I'm zero trusted. That doesn't exist. So you have to know what you're going to buy and the pace you're going to buy, why you're going to buy them, how they talk together, and then execute your implementation that way. So if you're going to approach this and do it, don't do it in a hurry. Don't got to buy something tomorrow, right? Take a look at it. Let's look at these tenants, go through what we've talked about today, look at what solutions will actually integrate with each other so you're not stuck in the SIM and SOAR route, where you now have solutions that don't talk and you're going to have to overlay some overlay on top of it, trying to get them to talk to each other. Get the ones that already talk to each other. And if you overlay something on top of it, all you're doing is enhancing what's already good versus trying to get something that doesn't work to work. It's a whole different position to be in. So when we're moving forward, I recommend that you keep all those things in mind. Again, my goal here on these webinars is not to sell you things, is to share information. So if you ever feel that I'm not doing that, please let me know. We'll modify them to make sure that I'm hitting the goal. I hope this was useful to you. We're at 2 minutes before I'm supposed to be quiet. So I skipped a little bit, but I think we've achieved the goal here. But I want to stop and let anybody who is listening to this ask any questions that you have about anything that we've talked about, or something you may want me to jump into more detail on. Now's the time the floor is open. Ask away. Okay, how do you approach after the fact that you've already piecemealed? That's a great question. So if I'm stuck, so let's say that you have, and let's say you bought a Sonic wall, right? And you're stuck there. Like, no, you're not getting budget for anything else. And so you got a Sonic wall, so now you're married to that. And then For some reason, you signed a 3-year WebRoot contract, right? And WebRoot's terrible, but you're stuck with that. I can at least check to see if it's on. And I'm not going to get budget for that. But I do want to try to get there, right? So it's like, okay, well, do we have Microsoft? I got Entra. There's a lot I can leverage out of Entra. And then I would look at Sentinel, depending on my budget. I'd look at a different SIM that more SOAR with SOAR capabilities. You could look at something like, since WebRoot was cheap, you could go, maybe I replace that with CrowdStrike plus their XDR capabilities. And so I get kind of a SIM that would integrate with SonicWall and bring their data in to help me act. So there's a couple of different ways to do it. But if you're stuck in those 3-year contracts and you're not going to get any more money for those particular solutions, you have to start looking at what you're layering on top of them to be able to join them together. If you're stuck with a terrible IDP, so let's say you're not using Duo for MFA, you're using Duo as your IDP, then you're just stuck. Like, you need to jettison that and you need to go to Entra, right? And that, if you're on Microsoft M series, that's not going to cost you any money. So it's case by case basis, but generally speaking, if your solutions are okay and you're just trying to add to it, you're really looking at that top layer of interjecting a SIM or a SOAR tool that will help you do the response a little bit better. So, complicated answer depending on the details, but those are different scenarios and different ways to approach it. All right. Anybody else? What other questions do we have that maybe you want me to dive a little bit deeper on to be able to get value out of this? Yeah, and so that's a good question on balancing the friction. So when we talked about the protecting the user and viewing the user as more than just a person and their MFA, viewing them as a person and a device and a location and a behavior. One is that will allow us, when we do detect something, for it to actually be real. So user disruption due to false flag goes down. So that's one way that it makes it better. Second, the SSO experience is better. Everybody likes one username and password versus 5 username and password. So you're making that a little bit better. If you go into something like Zscaler for private app access, right? So you got something on-prem or you got something thrown up in AWS or Azure. Old school experience on a VPN was what? You log in to your computer, then you log into your VPN, and then your internet connection flutters a little bit. And because it's an IPsec tunnel, it drops you. And then you got to reestablish the tunnel, right? With Zscaler, because of the way that it works, when you log into your computer, you're logged in. There is no separate login to the VPN. If your internet connection flutters, who cares? You're still logged in. So you can actually, as you go into Zero Trust, the user experience slowly becomes better, not worse. And this is something that we identified. It was about five or 6 years ago. And it was with Zscaler. They came in, we had a government contract where they wanted to get rid of all of the servers on-prem. And, our initial response to that was, no, that's not possible. And their response to us was, would you like this contract? And we said, yes, we would. And he said, okay, well then, these are the terms. And we said, okay, we'll make it work. And Zscaler walked in the room and told us how all this was going to work. And we literally kicked them out of the room. This is back when they were trading at $30 a share. Nobody knew who they were. And we're like, we're very sorry, but you're trying to tell me that it's faster, easier, with a better user experience and safer. They're like, yeah, that's what we mean. That's not how security works, bud. And so we literally wanted to stop talking to them. Then their engineering team came and showed us how it worked. And ever since then, we've moved towards a SASE position, whether it be Zscaler or Netscope. It does work. It does improve the user experience. So I hope that answers that question. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen, before I can let you guys go a little bit early, but Depends on the size of the org. Um, if we're looking at a small org, something say sub 200 people, and you're going to go, obviously we have a methodology to get this implemented. Um, we can get you up and running into a zero trust position, non-killing of the AD, because that's a whole separate project. So if you have an AD on-prem, this will zero trust the AD, we'll secure it, and then we can work on killing it. Or getting rid of it. Sorry, I probably should say kill the AD, but getting rid of the AD. We can get you there 90 days, something like that. If we're going to really approach this and go, okay, look, we're going to go with the way that you guys know how zero trusted architecture. We want to do one of your cookie cutter solutions. We're going to modify it to fit your organization. But after that, within 90 days, you'll have Zscaler out there. You'll have CrowdStrike installed. Everything will be communicating. You'll have contextual based access. You'll have SIPA to be able to make sure that your IP is considered when you're logging into Microsoft in your IDPs. I mean, that sets up pretty quickly because we have a standard way of doing it. So, then the constraint really is funding and ability of the client to assign resources. Now, our standard implementations, we don't need a lot of your resources to be able to get them done. Again, we're talking 250 below on the user count. If you have an extremely complex environment, obviously it's going to take a little bit longer. We'll have to talk, but say an average company about 250, 3 months, you'll be up and running. All right, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up now. I thank you for coming to the webinar. I hope it was actually. Let me just ask a question. Was this useful to you? Is this a webinar that you are glad that you showed up, or are you sitting here regretting your decision? All right, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming and showing up. Lee, do you have anything to say before we take off?
Thank you, guys. And yes, we will be sending out a recording after the event, so keep your eyes out for that. And also, we look forward to getting the invites out for our next webinar, as Perry mentioned. So, thank y'all so much. Appreciate it.
Take care.